We have a lot of great content today. I'm joined by three of my fabulous colleagues who I will let introduce themselves shortly. As you know, today is our webinar on data chaos to clarity, how to unlock powerful insights from your enrollment data. And so we're going to be talking through sort of some best practices, some things we look at, some real customer examples of things that are kind of happening best practice wise on our platform. If you have any questions along the way, please drop them. Actually, if you don't mind dropping, you can drop them in the chat, but we prefer in the Q&A just for our own moderation's sake. We can control things better that way. And just as a reminder, this recording will be sent out to everyone here today. And actually, even if you have to drop off early, we'll make sure everyone gets it. So excellent. Well, thanks again for joining. Um, Quick overview on Avela. Hopefully you're all mostly familiar with us. Our long-term mission and vision is to really help every child have access to a great education. And, as such, we've developed a platform for families to help navigate their choices, apply to their school of choice. We have some equitable algorithmic lotteries that we run. And of course, through that full registration piece, long term, we want to be the destination for families and students to enroll in everything in their community. And obviously, we're starting at pre-K through 12 right now. We work across the country with cities, states, nonprofits, school districts, a handful of charter common apps, charter management organizations. We work in early childhood. Hopefully, you recognize a couple of logos here. Garland, you mentioned you're on. And so, yes, we have experience working everywhere from, very small nonprofits to very large urban school districts and cities. And so there's certainly a way that we can work with all of you as well. For today, we are going to cover a handful of things, obviously. If you have questions along the way, please jump in. But I think we're going to first talk about the importance of collecting data. Obviously, everyone is collecting data, but let's talk about kind of why we do that and what we're going to do with that data. Obviously, there's a handful of different types of reporting that we offer, that everyone wants to have access to, how you can use that data, whether that is for filling seats or planning or just continuous improvement. And then obviously there's some custom needs that you'll need data for. So we're going to talk about all that. And then we have a little bonus here at the end. I won't spoil that. So with that, let me hand it over to my colleague Carla to introduce herself and kick us off.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everybody. I'm Carla Pugliese. I am on the client services team here at Avela. Just by way of brief background on myself, I am very excited for this webinar since my background is my life before Avela in research. I ran my own consultancy doing mixed methods research and professional development in districts and CMOs and private schools and kind of every form of educational environment. So this is a topic near and dear to my heart. And maybe I'll give a second for Rachel and Sally to say hello as well. You'll hear from them as we go through some examples today of these different types of data that we can leverage from the application and enrollment process.
Great. Thanks, Carla. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Rachel Leopold Abramowitz, and I am a teammate of Carla's on the client services team here at Avela. I am also very excited about this topic. Before joining Avela, I was on the enrollment research and policy team within the Office of Student Enrollment at New York City Public Schools for 8 years. So analyzing 3K, pre-K, kindergarten, gifted and talented data, and implementing those admissions processes for a long time. So excited to be here with all of you and at Avela. Sally?
Thanks, Rach. Hi, everyone. I'm Celesad. I work in the design team, part of the product team as a larger overall. And in product, what some of the things we do is basically look at data, take a look at what people are doing on a day-to-day basis, and that's basically why I'm here to extrapolate some of that for our customers, prospective customers, etc. Back to you, Carla.
Thank you. All right. So as Mike said, we wanted to start off by just sort of high level talking about why we look at admissions and enrollment data and what are the different ways that you can leverage this data. There are really, there's an abundance of valuable information that you collect from families during the application and enrollment period. Not just what you are having families, transmit to you and the questions you're asking in your application and registration forms, but also in what you can learn about who is applying, who's getting stuck at different parts of the process, who is opting in to apply for choice programs or particular strands, et cetera. These insights can really provide actionable outcomes in both tactics and strategy within your organization. Work when we're operating in a time of tighter budgets, when things are always high stakes in education and things feel even more high stakes potentially right now. This makes sort of communicating decisions to families and boards much more clear, and allow you to really kind of be on your spot and be certain about what you are, what choices you're making. So the different kinds of data that we will talk about today, reporting and data access, we'll kind of go from the deep dive, tactical in the weeds, to the more zoomed out. So first we'll talk about student segment reports. This is how many students and which ones are on a waitlist for an oversubscribed school. We'll talk about aggregate reports. This is about, putting lots of student data together and looking at trends, comparing across geographic area, comparing across sending school, comparing across any sort of demographic information about your applicants. We'll talk about behavioral reports. This is really a benefit of using a unified software tool like Avela for your application and enrollment process, because you're able to look at literally how families are interacting with the process, how long it takes them to go through your application flow, where they're getting hung up, what's creating a sticking point or adding friction to the process for them. And then finally, we'll talk about sort of multi-source data access. So really custom data dashboards that you can build out by combining multiple sources of data together. All right, and Rachel, I'll hand it to you to talk about our first example.
Sure. Thanks, Carla. Yeah, so our first example is a case study where one of our customers, who is a very large city in the Northeast, they're using Avela to fill their portfolio of early childhood seats. Within their portfolio, they have school district seats and then also private providers that contract with the city. So they're all on this common application. And one big problem that they have is that, families are not submitting applications after they get started, right? And so, they need to use their data to really maximize how they fill their seats and how they strategically fill their seats. And really, this is because, as many of you know, in some choice programs, and especially in the early childhood sector where programs are optional, sometimes it's harder to make families, follow through and actually hit that submit button, even if it's easy. Sometimes they struggle with that. And so that's one problem. And then the flip side, actually, of their problem of filling seats is that there's an uneven interest in providers, right? And so there are some very high demand providers in the city that have very long wait lists. And then there are providers, and those families are also waiting for seats. And then there are providers that have many vacancies and can accept students right away. And so this customer is creating, to address that first problem, they're creating a segmented student view of just those in-progress applicants, right? And you can kind of see what that actually looks like in Avela in a saved view of just their in-progress applicants. And what they're doing is they're actually sending bi-weekly messages to these applicants with nudges to get them back into the system and hit the application button. As you can see here on the right, the nudge is custom to the parent. It brings in the parent's name, which is definitely a best practice, and bringing in the URL to bring them right back to the site to encourage them to apply. This customer has actually also built a tracker outside of Avela where they are taking account of the number of messages that they have sent, and then the percent of those applicants that they message that actually convert to a submission. And so looking at that week over week is a really nice way to see the impact of your message. And they are seeing a lot of success with that as well. And that way you can also do some testing to see, is there a type of message that works better for converting those in progress applications to submissions. And then on the flip side, they are also using messages to encourage families to apply to those lower demand schools that are sitting around waiting for a seat. And so there's a lot of different ways they can do this. In Avela in particular, messaging families is a big one, but also in their Explore tool, which is our school navigation site that our customers can have. There are labels for on each provider and each school where seats are available. Families can filter to that. And so they're taking the data from the application and putting it in that public facing view. Okay.
There's a nice closer
Oh,
look.
great. This is just a zoomed in look. And I would say one other thing that this customer is doing with this saved view is they do not actually want to continuously message in progress applicants, the same in progress applicants every other week. And so they are applying a flag to these applications, what we call tags, when outreach is done, and then removing those records so that they really are only hitting up families on the cadence that they want rather than spamming families. So that's another way to incorporate data very strategically here into your workflow and making an impact.
Our next category, we're going to look at an example of an aggregate report in sort of our data for equity umbrella. So this is a mid to large size suburban district. The problem they're looking to solve is really increasing the diversity of their applicant pool to be representative of the district as a whole, and looking at across all of their programs so that it's not just a certain segment who are applying to the sort of perceived harder to get into programs or things like that. The data that they are collecting here is really looking at the location of their applicants based on zip code. This is, of course, driven by their own prior knowledge of their district and demographics of their district, where families live, sort of the relevant populations in terms of size, the number of families in each zip code within their district, and then looking to see how that compares with where they're seeing applications come in from. The actions that came out of this, report are really, truly boots on the ground. They have a team of door-to-door volunteers who go around to encourage families to apply during the application window. And they determine the routing for these teams based on this zip code data that they're collecting. So during the application window, they'll be going out and trying to boost application numbers in these underrepresented zip codes. This kind of data collection can also allow you, to staff up to meet, say, language support needs of underrepresented populations or recently immigrant families, and encourage, again, a more diverse pool of applicants and making sure that you're reaching all of the families within your community. A nice closer look at that. You can see also a second version here with these dots. This is actually from a different client who pinpoints the exact address actually of every single applicant. They want to see it as a dot graph. And this can also be helpful, to see just sort of thinking about patterns where you might want to do more outreach or where you can build on sort of high demand and success. All right. Again, zooming out to another aggregate report at an even sort of higher level and starting to think about sort of ongoing strategy in addition to more kind of tactical actions. This is another large district, an urban district. Here, they're really looking to figure out how to best allocate their resources for greatest impact going forward. We know that a lot of districts right now are navigating potential consolidations or school closures, and also thinking about how they can boost the success of their most successful programs, and continue to expand upon what's working. So in this case, the district is using waitlist data to help them guide sort of future expansion or replication of particular programs based on demonstrated family preferences, right? They know we are able to see how families are ranking their choices, where they're staying on wait lists, and how long they're opting to stay on wait lists. And that can drive decisions about, what families really want and what kind of programs should get more funding, should be expanded, should be replicated to other campuses, et cetera. You can also analyze this, of course, through an equity lens, looking for demographic patterns within waitlist data that can also inform potential policy changes.
Okay, great. So on to behavioral reports. So Sally and I are going to tag team this, but I do want to share we have a few big Charter Common App customers who are on the Northeast, who we have many of the same authorizers actually across those Common Apps. And so one, especially in the Northeast, the charter authorizers really are strict, and they want to make sure that all applications are easy for a family to submit and are not a barrier to entry. And so this is something that our customers pay attention to a lot year over year as they're editing their forms or editing their applications to make them even easier for families to apply. And so there's this tension, though, that they experience between, making the application very easy to fill out versus, collecting all that required information up front, right? I think as administrators, we want to know everything about a family, but we also don't want to be doing anything that's going to, backfire and be an unintended consequence, right? And making sure they can actually follow through with the entire enrollment process. So Sally, you want to hop in here kind of with those and what those
Yeah,
reports are.
absolutely. I think I want to highlight one key difference that behavioral reports have from everything else that we've been discussing, because I think it's a different term, right? Like, I think in both aggregate and student segmentation kind of reports, we get to see like the total amounts, how many people basically we're looking at and how many we're dealing with. But behavioral reports really shine at telling us why they're doing something or what exactly is going on, the how behind it all. And so that is what's really interesting about these numbers that we're seeing here. Um, we do have several different use cases for this. We simply shared an example here, but perhaps specifically to what Rachel is speaking about, which has to do with how easy things are to submit. We do track, for instance, family usability. We keep that as a benchmark across all of our customers, just so that they know, the kind of ease of use that they have to aim for. In this case, what we're also seeing is, okay, well, how are families engaging across the week, and to try and see which days of the week are best to, for instance, send a communication to families. It's going to get a better response just because that is a day that they're most active in. Another type of scenario that we see very commonly is okay, I just want to know how long it takes to send an application or send a registration form, even the overall process, right? How long it takes from the application process to the enrollment process, the entire wingspan of that, as well as, and this one is really, really interesting, um, where families are dropping off in an application process. So this is particularly relevant to try and review the kind of structure that we have in forms, the degree of complexity that we have in our questions, and balancing the needs that we may have between what we absolutely must collect from families versus, what we can perhaps compromise on so that it is a little bit easier for them.
Great. Thank you. And so, oh, sorry, I was gonna say what this customer in particular has done with this data is they have removed some redundant questions that they realized weren't necessary, and they've also given thought to what questions really have to be required and what don't to make sure that families can get to the end, and they can always ping families later to collect that required documentation, but at least get them in the pipeline. And then Sally pointed out the marketing, right? And really making sure your campaigns are going out on days where you have high engagement in your application. Okay.
You're muted, Carla.
Thank you, Sally. Sorry about that. Okay, so the last piece we're going to talk about, or rather penultimate, since Mike has bonus material for us at the end, is sort of advanced data usage. So really data for your own bespoke needs, where, we know that a lot of organizations already have really robust business intelligence systems or data warehouses they have set up meticulously pulling from different sources. And we want to make it really easy to slide application and enrollment data into that pre-existing system. So in this case, right, this client is a multi-state network. They run preschools across multiple states, and they are expanding not only within the regions they're in, but into new regions and new states sort of every year. And so they leverage our API to pull really sort of a lot of different types of data from the application process, not just student level data, but also sort of some of these behavioral analytics as well, not just on the family side, but looking at, how long does an application sit and submitted before it's verified? How long does each piece of information sit before it has your particular tag attached to it? Things like that, so that they can refine their own internal process and also figure out how to better serve their existing families and where to go to continue growing their network and serve more families. So they're pulling in information from Avela, say based on families' ranking of programs and where they're seeing a lot of interest, combined with data from their marketing team, combined with data from their host site partners who, are reporting back to them in different streams so that they can figure out strategically, right, where is their demand for growth? Where do they need to maybe apply some more targeted outreach, either to applying or current families to mitigate abandonment during the enrollment process, or where can they reach out with more marketing initiatives to continue to grow, right, their network and their student base. All right, Mike, bonus time.
Bonus time. Well, the team here, we've talked about a lot of the product capabilities in terms of, the reporting aspects that Avela has and other things you can do. But I think it's worth pointing out that our CS team does so much more than just help set up some of these things. They really are consultants at the end of the day. I always like to say that our everyone on our CS team is both a former enrollment and school or district admin as well as a parent, and so they've seen all sides of the equation, and so they really do come at it with a unique angle, and that can be anything from helping run your or rather define and describe your lottery to running simulations. We can help out with forecasting and portfolio planning. I know districts are facing a lot of competition right now. And of course, we're able to work on community feedback. And so beyond just the product, we do a lot of services as well. And we really have an expert team there. So that was my little bonus. Actually, in fact, two things on the bottom. This is from some previous, actually a previous webinar that we can share out as well, is just looking at our own system. We see 75 to 80% of users starting their applications on mobile, which is, I think, originally surprising for me, although now when I walk around my town and I see everyone buried in their phones, I don't think it should be as surprising anymore. But that said, I think there's maybe it's just the millennial trend is that big decisions are done on desktop, and so maybe people are still while starting on mobile, they're still completing those applications on desktop. I know I'm the same way. I will do a lot of research on flights and hotels on my phone, but that's a big screen decision for me, and so I always go ahead and book those on a computer. So I completely understand this, but that's just a sort of example of insights that we're able to derive and share with customers, whether ad hoc or through a dashboard. So, as I said, you are well on your way to uncovering assets, or rather, uncovering powerful insights through your data assets. We can help talk through your goals. We can provide tips. We can set these things up. If you have any questions, please go ahead and drop them in the Q&A. Or you can obviously contact any of us afterwards. All of our emails are just firstname@avela.org. I put mine in here, but feel free to reach out to the experts as well. While people are putting in their questions, I have a question. Maybe it's a bit of a softball. We showed a lot of these reports and the different versions of them. I know a lot of them were sort of anonymized and even using sort of our demo account. But if I'm hands-on keyboard in the system and I'm getting all this enrollment data, ultimately there's someone that I need to share this with. And so can you guys speak to that process and how these things can be packaged up and shared beyond, the login, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because yeah, data is not really useful if you can't
Right.
disseminate it to other people. That's one of the things that is really most flexible, I would say, about our software is sort of the numerous ways you can get data out of the system. Most commonly, we will see folks set up scheduled exports, so they will, figure out what are the different reports essentially, right, that they need. Those can be easily configured as what we call saved views in our system. So it's just a single click, shows you everybody who meets that particular criteria of that report. And then you set up a recurring custom export with just the data that you need, none of the extraneous fluff. It can bring in information from both profiles, account information and form information, application questions, et cetera. And then it can go wherever is most useful to you. It can go to your email as a CSV. It can go to an SFTP server where you or anyone else on your team who may not even be in, need to be in Avela directly can grab it. It can go directly to a Google Sheet and be used sort of in whatever way that you want. We do have a number of folks as well who leverage our API to pull data, either ad hoc whenever they need it, or using webhooks that we have in our system or scripts that they set up externally to pull data when sort of different event triggers fire and send it into whatever system they're using to aggregate, all of their data reports from multiple sources. Rachel,
Great.
anything? I feel like that's all. Sally knows all.
Perfect.
I know Mike,
No,
I
I
know.
think
Oh, go ahead, Sally, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna add, like for everything that's behavioral in aggregate, we also have those capabilities as well, right? Like anything that you may want to look at ad hoc, it's very easy. You can just share that link with anyone who's supposed to be able to have access to that. You can password protect it. You can schedule it as well if you rather not have to visit anywhere and just get a snapshot at your email. You can also do that as well.
Great. There's a question here, and I think you covered a little bit, and I think it will vary by client, but when you look at our customers who are the most data driven, what are they paying the most attention to on a regular basis? And again, I think this will vary, but any insights you guys can share? It's tricky. I'm sure it varies a lot.
Yeah, I think a lot of our larger customers that are serving, many schools, many students are looking at equity and making sure that they have a fair distribution of their families engaging in their process and making sure that there's not one group of families or students that have an unfair advantage over the schools or programs that they're offering than another. And so those larger customers, as Carla was pointing out, often have a lot of technical expertise on their team, full-time data analysts that can merge together different data sets and pull, their demographic data from their SIS, merge it with their admissions data from Avela to really look at the overlay of, demographic information, geographic information to really understand who's engaging in the process and who's not, and then how they can turn that into an action. Yeah, I don't know, Carla, if you have any thoughts, but as a former district administrator in New York City, that was the big question, right? Making sure the process was as fair as possible.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think it's sort of, the specific data points will differ community to community based on your sort of who your population is that you're serving and what questions you ask on your form. But I think the ultimate question is always, who's applying and who's not. And and whatever data gets at that question and allows you to balance those scales going forward is what people are most interested in.
Have a great rest of your day. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel, Carl, and Sally as well.
Yeah,
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for having us.
thanks.